Visualize a tomato plant reaching 7 feet in height, bending under the weight of fruit so abundant it defies the calculated averages of modern agronomy. In this soil, there are no blue fertilizer crystals, and no pesticide residues cling to the leaves. The sole input is a single, spiral-wound copper wire penetrating the ground. This is not a work of fiction. It is a documented historical reality that produced crop increases of 300%. This figure should have transformed the world, but instead it vanished into thin air. You have been conditioned to view your garden as a chemistry set, a lifeless sponge that depends on the constant injection of synthetic nutrients sold by a few massive conglomerates. However, this model completely ignores nature's most fundamental force, electricity. The atmosphere above you is a vibrant ocean of voltage, a colossal battery providing limitless energy, while the earth beneath serves as the negative ground. For millennia, plants evolved to bridge this gap, flourishing on the invisible flow of telluric currents. We did not simply forget this science, we replaced it with a recurring billing cycle. When you insert that copper antenna, you are not just gardening. You are closing a circuit that was severed by industrial dogma. Why did the research of the 1920s, which proved these mechanisms of ionization and magnetic resonance, suddenly go dark? Why are the blueprints for these atmospheric antennas missing from every textbook? I am here to open the archives. I will demonstrate how to harness the physics of the earth to render chemical fertilizers obsolete. The mechanism is not magic. It is raw, suppressed conductivity. The only question that remains is, are you brave enough to cut the cord to the industry and plug your soil back into the universe? To understand why this technology was buried, we must rewind the clock to France in the 1920s, a time when the boundaries between physics and agriculture were being rewritten by a man named Justin. He was not a sorcerer, but a pragmatic engineer who understood that plants are essentially electrical conductors. In 1925, he filed patent number 590067, a document that should have been the cornerstone of modern farming, but is now merely a dusty footnote in the archives. Christoflo did not just theorize. He built his electromagnetic terrestrial apparatus, which was a precise assembly of copper and zinc, designed to capture atmospheric electricity and channel it into the soil. The results were not marginal errors. They were statistical anomalies so massive they defied the biology of that era. Records verify oats growing to heights of 5 feet, potatoes remaining free of blight without a single ounce of copper sulfate spray, and vineyards producing yields sweet enough to panic established winemakers. So, why are you not using this device today? The answer lies not in the failure of the science, but in the success of a different industry. Following the First World War, the massive factories built to produce nitrates for explosives faced a crisis of irrelevance. They needed a new market, and they found it in the soil. Chemical giants realized that selling bags of synthetic nitrogen every single season was a far more lucrative business model than selling a farmer a permanent copper rod. Once the narrative shifted, the rigorous electrophysiology of Christoflo was ridiculed as pseudoscience, drowned out by the aggressive marketing of the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium doctrine. The power of electricity was not debunked. It was economically assassinated. We traded a system of infinite, free atmospheric resonance for a subscription model of chemical dependency, effectively erasing the knowledge that the earth itself was designed to power your harvest. Let us strip away the mysticism. What we are discussing here is not magic, it is fundamental geophysics, a field your biology textbooks conveniently ignored. To understand the power of the copper wire, you must accept a physical reality. You are living inside a massive battery. The surface of the Earth carries a negative charge, while the ionosphere above us is positively charged. The space in between, where your plants are struggling to grow, is the dielectric of a giant capacitor holding an incredible potential difference. The measurements do not lie. On average, for every meter you rise from the ground, the electrical potential increases by about 100 volts. This means the tip of a 2-meter cornstalk is interacting with a potential 200 volts higher than its roots. In a pristine environment, plants act as weak biological antennas, bridging this gap to drive their metabolic functions. But in our modern context, the soil has been insulated by crusts of chemical salts and deadened by compaction, severing this natural flow. This is where the copper wire enters the equation. Copper is not just a metal in this specific configuration. It is a superconductor for atmospheric energy. When you drive a spiral wound copper antenna into the ground, you are not decorating your garden. You are installing a lightning rod for life force. You are creating a path of least resistance for atmospheric electricity to surge down into the rhizosphere while simultaneously tapping into the telluric currents, the natural electric currents moving underground. You are manually closing the switch on a circuit that industrial agriculture turned off a century ago. You have been sold a lie that your soil is empty, that it is a barren wasteland requiring constant chemical injections to sustain life. The truth is, your soil is likely drowning in nutrients, but they are locked away in complex molecular bonds that your plants cannot break. When you insert that copper antenna, you're not adding fertilizer. You are turning your soil moisture into a weak electrolytic bath. This is high school chemistry applied to a biological crisis. The atmospheric current traveling down the wire hits the groundwater and triggers electrolysis, a process that instantly shatters these tough chemical bonds. Insoluble phosphorus and potassium, previously useless to the root system, are ionized and broken down into their most elemental charged states. Plants do not eat rocks, they drink ions. By electrifying the rhizosphere, you are essentially predigesting the minerals for the plant, making them 100% bioavailable without the salt burn of synthetic fertilizers. But the reaction goes deeper. This electrical stimulation mimics the energetic signature of a thunderstorm, a phenomenon known to boost plant growth. The microcurrents accelerate nitrogen fixation, pulling the 78% nitrogen abundance from the air and binding it to the soil particles. You are creating a localized, continuous lightning strike in your garden bed. While your neighbors are buying bags of blue crystals to force-feed their crops, your copper wire is simply using the laws of physics to unlock the buffet that has been sitting under their feet the entire time. Think of the sap in your plants not just as water, but as the blood of a living organism, carrying vital nutrients to every leaf and stem. In a standard chemically treated garden, this flow is sluggish, fighting against gravity and poor osmotic pressure. But when you introduce the copper antenna, you are engaging a principle known as electroosmosis. By increasing the electrical potential between the soil and the atmosphere, you are essentially turning up the voltage on the plant's internal pump. The sap does not just flow, it surges. This accelerated circulation means nutrients are delivered at a rate that traditional biology deems impossible, explaining the explosive growth rates observed in electroculture. The most disruptive effect, the one the pesticide companies fear most, happens at the cellular wall. Under the influence of this subtle electrical field, plants metabolize minerals more efficiently, leading to a measurable thickening of their cell walls. This is not just structural support, it is natural armor. A plant with robust, electrified cell walls is mechanically difficult for insects to puncture. Furthermore, pests are nature's garbage collectors. They are evolutionarily programmed to attack weak energetic voids. An electrified plant vibrates with a frequency of health that renders it invisible or even repulsive to aphids and beetles. You are not just growing bigger crops, you are growing crops that fight back, rendering the entire aisle of garden poisons completely irrelevant. While Western agriculture remains shackled to the petrochemical drip, the East has quietly industrialized the invisible. We are not talking about a few potted plants in a basement anymore. We are looking at a massive state-funded vindication of the physics we just discussed. In a comprehensive initiative that should be front-page news, China has deployed electroculture technology across 3,600 hectares of greenhouses. That is nearly 9,000 acres of electrified soil operating right now. This is not a backyard experiment. It is a direct challenge to the global fertilizer monopoly. The Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences did not just tinker. They proved the concept on a continental scale. The data is staggering. Vegetable yield surged by 20 to 30%, translating to massive tonnage of additional food produced without a single drop of extra chemical input. But the statistic that should terrify the agrochemical giants is the reduction in toxicity. In these electrified zones, pesticide use dropped by a confirmed 70 to 100%. This is the undeniable modern validation of the forgotten pioneer. It proves that the patents from the 1920s were never pseudoscience. They were a roadmap to a post-chemical world that one half of the globe is already building, while the other is kept in the dark, paying for poisons they do not need. Enough theory. It is time to arm yourself. You do not need a degree in electrical engineering to build this device. You simply need to make a trip to the hardware store and follow the specific parameters of conductivity. The heart of the system is the antenna, and its spine must be a simple wooden dowel or a bamboo stake. Do not use metal for the support rod. If you do, you ground the charge prematurely, short-circuiting the very potential gradient we are trying to harvest. The wood acts as an insulator, forcing the atmospheric energy to travel exclusively through the copper path we are about to create. Aim for a height of at least 6 feet. Remember, we are reaching for voltage, and every inch of elevation increases the potential difference your plants can access. Now, for the copper itself. This is where most modern experimenters fail before they even begin. You must use pure, bare copper wire. Absolutely no enamel, no plastic coating, and no varnish. If the wire is insulated, it cannot interact with the ions in the air. It becomes biologically inert. Look for 10 to 14 gauge solid copper wire. Anything thinner is too brittle to hold the precise geometry we need, and anything thicker is an unnecessary expense. You are building a receiver, not a power line. The goal is to create a conductive spiral that sits atop the wooden stake, exposed to the elements and ready to channel the atmospheric pulse down into the soil. This is your hardware, simple, cheap, and devastatingly effective against the industrial model. Precision is the difference between a lightning rod and a useless stick. You cannot simply wrap a wire around a pole and expect a miracle. You must mimic the geometry of life itself. Nature does not build in straight lines. She builds in spirals, following the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio found in everything from pine cones to galaxies. Your antenna is no different. Start at the bottom of your wooden stake and wind the copper wire upwards in a clockwise motion, mimicking the growth of a vine seeking the sun. The spacing is critical. Tighter coils at the base, gradually expanding as you ascend. This is not aesthetic. It is an induction coil designed to capture the scalar waves of the atmosphere. Once wound, the installation demands cardinal alignment. You must locate magnetic north, not true north, but the magnetic pulse of the planet. Dig a hole 6 to 8 inches deep on the south side of your plant. This depth is non-negotiable. It places the copper terminal right at the heart of the root zone, the rhizosphere, where the ion exchange is most critical. When you bury the wire, ensure the spiral is facing north, acting as a passive receiver for the Earth's magnetic flow. You are not just planting a stake, you are tuning an instrument. If the alignment is off, the signal is weak. If the geometry is precise, you are creating a localized vortex of energy that will pulse through the soil long after you have walked away. We must now advance from simple conductivity to the realm of resonance, the domain of Lakhovsky. While Christoflo focused on the flow of electricity, Lakhovsky understood that every living cell is essentially a microscopic oscillating circuit. His breakthrough was the open-ring oscillator, a concept so simple it insults the complexity of modern biotech. This is not a closed loop. It is a copper ring with a deliberate gap, creating a capacitor that tunes into the cosmic background radiation. When you place this open circuit around the base of a plant, you're not just conducting energy, you're creating a radio receiver for the specific frequency of life. The physics here is profound. Sick or dying plants often suffer from a cellular oscillation imbalance. Their internal frequency has dropped. The Lakhovsky coil acts as a master tuning fork. It captures the broad spectrum of cosmic waves and rebroadcasts a fundamental harmonic field directly into the plant structure. The results on incurable tree cancers and withered saplings are not just recovery, they are resurrections. By simply placing a specifically diametered copper loop, ends overlapping but never touching, around a struggling crop, you induce a vibratory rate that forces the cells to remember their original healthy function. You are essentially canceling out the static of environmental stress and bathing the plant in the pure, unadulterated signal of growth. When you finally plant these copper antennas, you are not just starting a garden, you are initiating a detoxification protocol for a landscape addicted to synthetic stimulants. Do not expect an instantaneous transformation if your soil has been saturated with NPK fertilizers for years. Much like a biological organism, the soil enters a withdrawal phase. Synthetic salts destroy the natural conductivity of the earth, creating a resistive barrier that the subtle atmospheric currents must first break through. In the first few weeks, you may see nothing or perhaps a slight yellowing as the plant's internal pump resets from chemical force feeding to autonomous electrical suction. This is the transition from a state of dependency to a state of sovereignty. You will witness the sweating out of residual salts as the increased electrical potential pushes these toxins deeper into the subsoil, away from the tender root zone. Observe the earthworms. They are the first to respond to the shift in telluric voltage, migrating toward the copper stakes where the soil is most vibrant and aerated. You are witnessing the return of the soil's immune system. By the second month, the signs of vitality, the deep waxy luster of the leaves, and the structural rigidity of the stems will confirm that the addiction has been broken. You are no longer a customer purchasing life in a bag. You are a technician of the planetary grid, facilitating a return to a self-sustaining, electrified equilibrium. The investigation concludes not with a summary, but with a confrontation. You now possess a blueprint that bypasses a trillion-dollar industry, a simple copper spiral that renders the global logistics of synthetic nitrates and neurotoxic pesticides obsolete. This is the ultimate forbidden technology because it cannot be metered, patented, or sold back to you in a plastic jug. The data from the 1920s and the modern 3,600 hectare validations in the East prove that the Earth is a self-sustaining energetic system designed to feed its inhabitants for free. The silence of the mainstream agricultural complex is not a lack of evidence. It is a defensive wall built to protect a subscription-based reality. You are standing at a crossroads of biological sovereignty. On one side lies the continued reliance on industrial chemistry, a path of rising costs, depleted soil, and systemic toxicity. On the other side is the path of the autonomous cultivator, one who understands that a 300% yield increase is a matter of physics, not a purchase order. By sticking that copper wire into the ground, you are performing an act of quiet rebellion. You are choosing the invisible resonance of the universe over the visible shackles of the corporation. The energy is already there, vibrating beneath your feet and pulsing above your head. The circuit is open. The only thing missing is your hand to close it. Will you remain a consumer of their poison, or will you become a conductor of the Earth's natural lightning? If this story has changed the way you look at the hidden potential within your own soil, please subscribe and like the channel. We are currently excavating the history that they have tried so desperately to bury. It is time to plant the seeds of the future. The next treasure of suppressed knowledge will be opened very soon.